Meanwhile, in Transporter Room 3 aboard the USS Perseverance, someone has to log every beam in and beam out, even when the ship is orbiting a peaceful science station, and the most exciting thing that happens is a delayed materialization by 0.03 seconds. Welcome, friend. You've wandered into another quiet corner of the future, where the extraordinary has become ordinary through repetition and routine. Tonight, we're stepping into the transporter room of a Federation starship, where managing the dematerialization and rematerialization of matter becomes a meditation, and where the most advanced technology in the galaxy reveals itself through the most routine of procedures. Here, behind the transporter console, you'll discover that even in an era of faster-than-light travel and exploration of distant worlds, someone still needs to check calibrations and maintain logs, no matter what fascinating destinations appear in the targeting scanners. So before you settle in for this shift with me, take a moment to like this video and subscribe, so we can keep bringing you more tales from the ordinary side of extraordinary places. Let me know in the comments where you're listening from tonight. It's always good to know who's keeping me company on these quiet watches. Now get comfortable. Let the quiet hush of the room surround you, and allow the small, steady moments of transporter operations to guide you gently toward rest. You step through the sliding doors into Transporter Room 3, and the familiar hum of the pattern buffers wraps around you like a well-worn uniform. It's not quite a sound, not quite a vibration, but something in between that only exists in the transporter rooms of Federation starships. The transition from the corridor's steady lighting to the transporter room's slightly dimmer, more focused illumination always makes you take a deeper breath, the way you might when entering a space where you'll spend the next several hours. The transporter room occupies a standardized section on Deck 6 of the USS Perseverance, with regulation dimensions that are identical across all Constitution-class vessels. The walls are the familiar grey-blue of Starfleet engineering, with black trim panels that hide the massive power conduits feeding the system. The lighting is carefully calibrated to reduce eye strain during long shifts, while maintaining the visibility needed to monitor materializations and spot any anomalies in the matter stream. The platform dominates the room, 6 circular pads arranged in 2 rows of 3, each one marked with its position number. The pads themselves are made of a composite material that's been engineered to withstand the thermal and quantum fluctuations of transport without degrading. They're cleaned between shifts, but you can see the faint scuff marks from countless boots, the microscopic wear patterns that tell the story of how many people have stood in those exact spots before dematerializing into energy and information. Behind the platform, the large wall display shows the ship's current position in standard orbit around Research Station Kepler 7, a peaceful, scientific outpost studying stellar phenomena. The station appears as a small schematic on the display, rotating slowly in its orbit. No threats, no emergencies, just another standard duty shift in what promises to be a quiet day aboard the Perseverance. Your relief operator, Lieutenant Chen, looks up from the console with a tired smile. She's been on duty for the past 8 hours, managing the gamma shift transports with the calm efficiency that comes from 5 years of transporter experience. "Evening, Riley," she says, her voice carrying that particular weariness that comes from staring at transport logs and beam coordinates for an entire shift. Quiet day mostly. Routine station transfers, a few cargo transports, nothing unusual. The pattern buffer has been running a little warm, but still within normal parameters. Engineering is aware. She slides the duty log pad across the console, and it makes a soft sound against the matte surface. The log is already displayed on screen, showing the day's transports in precise detail. Times, personnel, destinations, buffer readings, all the routine data that you'll add to over the next 8 hours. The console itself is a work of art in functional design. 3 main display screens show different information streams: transport queue, system diagnostics, and pattern buffer status. Below these, the primary control interface features the familiar touchscreen panels and a few physical controls that allow for manual override in emergencies. Everything is positioned exactly where your hands expect to find it after 2 years of operating this particular transporter room. You make your way around the console, performing the ritual of taking over from the previous operator. Chen walks you through the shift's highlights, a slightly elevated power fluctuation in Pad 4 during the 1400 transport, already logged and scheduled for inspection. A VIP transport from the station, scheduled for later in your shift. A reminder that the captain has authorised extended shore leave for 3 engineering crew members who'll need transport to the station at 1900 hours. The duty log for Transporter Room 3 sits in its holder beside the primary console, a physical backup despite having everything stored in the computer. Old habits from the early days of transporter technology, when operators liked having a paper trail of who went where and when. The pages have that particular smell of standard issue Starfleet documentation, slightly plasticy with a hint of the toner used by the ship's reproduction units. You've operated transporters for 2 years now, starting with the final year of your academy training and continuing through your assignment to the Perseverance. The work suits you, technical enough to require constant attention, routine enough to become meditative, important enough to matter. Every person who steps onto those pads is trusting you with their pattern, with the fundamental information that makes them who they are. It's a responsibility you've learned to carry lightly but never forget. The chronometer on the console shows 1547 hours. Your shift officially starts at 1600, but arriving early gives you time to review the systems properly, to make sure everything is calibrated and ready before the shift's transports begin. In Starfleet, where a transport might need to happen immediately, in an emergency, preparation matters more than in civilian operations. Chen logs out of the console, transferring primary control to your authorization codes. The computer chirps its acknowledgement, a sound you've heard thousands of times, but that still gives you a small sense of satisfaction. The transporter is now your responsibility, your domain for the next 8 hours. Pattern buffer, you ask, running through the mental checklist that every transporter operator develops. 0.73% above nominal, been there since about 1300. Engineering says it's thermal variance from the increased station traffic today. Nothing to worry about, but keep an eye on it. If it hits 0.95, call them for a cool-down cycle. You nod, making a mental note. Pattern buffers are robust systems, but they do have operational limits. The buffer stores the information of the transported person or object during the brief moment between dematerialization and rematerialization, a quantum pattern so precise that it can reconstruct every atom in exactly the right position. Keeping that buffer stable is critical to transporter safety. Biofilter status, all nominal, ran a level 1 diagnostic at 1430, passed with no anomalies. Next scheduled diagnostic is at 2200, should fall on your shift. The biofilter is one of the transporter's most important safety systems, screening out viruses, bacteria, and harmful pathogens during transport. It's saved countless lives over the years, preventing contamination while allowing personnel to move freely between ship and shore. The diagnostic schedule is sacred. No transporter operator skips a scheduled biofilter check. Chen gathers her personal pad and the coffee mug that's been her companion through the shift. The console's all yours, Riley. Quiet shift ahead, I think. The station transport schedule is already loaded, and there's nothing on the board that looks complicated. Thanks for the smooth handoff, Chen. Get some rest. You look like you've earned it. She smiles. 8 hours staring at transport coordinates will do that. See you tomorrow. The doors slide open and closed as Chen leaves, and suddenly you're alone in Transporter Room 3. Not quite alone. The ship's computer is always present, monitoring systems, ready to alert you to any anomalies. but alone in the human sense, with just the quiet hum of the equipment and the soft glow of the HUI console displays for company. You settle into the operator's chair, adjusting it slightly to match your preferred height and back support. The chair has been sat in by hundreds of operators before you, and you can feel where the padding has compressed in the most common positions. It's comfortable in a worn-in way, shaped by use into something that supports long shifts without causing discomfort. The pre-shift system check is next, and you pull up the diagnostics subroutine on the main display. This is standard procedure before every shift, a comprehensive check of every transporter system to ensure nothing has degraded since the last transport. The computer can run these checks automatically, but regulations require an operator to review and verify each result personally. Phase transition, coils, nominal. The display shows all 6 coils operating at 99.8% efficiency, well within acceptable parameters. These coils are what actually convert matter into energy and back again, creating the characteristic sparkle effect of materialization. They're the heart of the transporter, and they're running perfectly. Pattern buffer, 100.73% of nominal temperature, as Chen mentioned. You note this in the log with the timestamp. The buffer's molecular imaging scanners show green across the board, all 48 scanners reading properly and ready to capture transport patterns with quantum precision. Biofilter, nominal, last diagnostic. 74 minutes ago, next diagnostic scheduled for 2200 hours. The filter shows no accumulated particle load, its quantum resolution set to standard safety levels that will catch anything from viruses down to harmful radiation. Targeting scanners, nominal. These are the sensors that locate the transport subject and lock onto their coordinates with centimetre precision. A misalignment here could mean materializing someone 3 centimetres to the left of intended, which sounds trivial but could be catastrophic if they rematerialize inside a console or a wall. You run a calibration check, and the scanners confirm their accuracy within 0.01 centimetres. Perfect. Emitter array, nominal. The emitters around each transport pad project the annular confinement beam that holds the matter stream together during transport. All 48 emitters show ready status, their power feed stable, and their targeting matrices synchronized. You work through each system methodically, checking readings, comparing them to baseline parameters, noting anything that's even slightly elevated or decreased. This is the meditation of transporter operation, the systematic verification that everything is ready, that every safety system is armed, that every component is prepared to do its job when called upon. The intercom chirps. Bridge to Transporter Room 3. You tap the response panel. Transporter Room 3. Ensign Riley here. Riley, this is Commander Parks. We have your evening transport schedule uploaded to your console. First transport is scheduled for 16:15. Ensign Martinez returning from the station. Standard single-person transport. No special requirements. Acknowledged, Commander. Transporter Room 3 ready for scheduled operations. Very good. Bridge out. The schedule appears on your secondary display, a neat list of planned transports for the evening, times and personnel already arranged. You scan through them, noting the routine nature of most requests. Station personnel coming and going, a few cargo transports of scientific equipment, the shore leave departures Chen mentioned. Nothing unusual, nothing that requires special preparation or attention. You log your arrival in the duty log. 15:47 hours, Ensign Riley assumed transporter operations. Pre-shift diagnostics complete. All systems nominal. Pattern buffer temperature elevated 0.73% above nominal, within acceptable range. Monitoring per engineering guidance. Ready for operations. The chronometer shows 16:02 hours now. Your shift has officially begun, and the first transports will arrive at the pads in 13 minutes. You pull up the personnel file for Ensign Martinez, Security Division, assigned to provide protection detail for the science team on the station. Standard recall after completing his duty rotation. You verify that the station's coordinates are properly locked into the targeting scanners. Research station Kepler-7 maintains a stable orbit, but the computer continuously updates its position relative to the Perseverance, ensuring that transports will arrive at the correct location rather than empty space where the station was a fraction of a second earlier. The coordinate data shows solid lock, no drift, perfect alignment. Everything is ready. The transporter room is yours for the next 8 hours, and the steady rhythm of beam-ins and beam-outs will carry you through until the next shift takes over. You settle back in the chair, hands resting lightly on the console, and wait for the first transport request of the evening. The hum of the pattern buffers continues its quiet song, and you let the sound wash over you, marking the beginning of another standard shift in the extraordinary routine of Starfleet operations. The intercom chirps at exactly 16:15 hours. Starfleet operations run on precise schedules, especially when coordinating transports between vessels and stations. Transporter Room 3. This is Station Ops. We have Ensign Martinez ready for transport to your ship. Standing by on our pad, you tap the response panel. Acknowledged. Station Ops. Locked onto your coordinates. Beginning transport cycle. Your hands move through the familiar sequence, verifying the targeting lock on the station's transporter pad, checking that your receiving pad number 2 is clear and ready, confirming that the biofilter is active and the pattern buffer has sufficient capacity. Every transport follows the same checklist, the same verification sequence that's been drilled into every transporter operator from their first day of training. The coordinates show solid green. The station's transporter pad is clearly locked in the targeting scanner, and Martinez's biosignature is clearly detected, standing in exactly the position that station protocols require for transport. You engage the annular confinement beam, and the status display shows the beam successfully locking onto the transport subject. Energizing, you say, partly for the log, partly out of habit, partly because saying it aloud keeps you focused on the precise timing that transport requires. Your fingers slide the primary control forward smoothly, increasing power to the phase transition coils. On the platform behind you, Pad 2 begins its characteristic hum, rising in pitch as energy floods into the system. The emitters around the pad activate in sequence, creating the annular confinement beam that will hold Martinez's pattern stable during the brief moment of quantum uncertainty between energy and matter. The column of light appears, that distinctive transporter effect that's become so iconic in Federation operations, sparkles of energy coruscating in the air, forming the rough outline of a humanoid shape. The materialization process takes 4.3 seconds, and you watch the progress indicator climb steadily across your display. 25% materialized, 50%, 75%, and finally 100%. Ensign Martinez stands on Pad 2, solid and whole, blinking slightly as his eyes adjust to the ship's lighting. The transporter completes its final phase with a soft chime, and the display shows transport complete, all biometrics normal, no anomalies detected. Welcome back aboard, Ensign, you say, making a notation in the transport log. 16:15 hours, single transport from Station Kepler-7, Pad 2. How was the station? Martinez steps down from the pad, straightening his uniform. Quiet, sir. The science team is excited about their stellar data, but from a security standpoint, it was an uneventful rotation. Good to be back on the Perseverance. Glad to have you back. Enjoy your off-duty time. Martinez nods and heads for the doors, which slide open with their characteristic whisper. You're alone again, updating the log with precise details. Transport time, origin and destination coordinates, power consumption, well within normal range, pattern buffer utilization, minimal as expected for a single humanoid transport, biofilter status, active, no contamination detected. The log entry is thorough. Timestamp, personnel transported, origin, destination, pad used, system performance metrics, any anomalies, none, operator notes, routine transport, no complications. Every transport generates this level of detail, creating a comprehensive record that can be reviewed if questions arise later about who went where and when. The intercom chirps again before you finish the log entry. Bridge to Transporter Room 3. We have a cargo transport scheduled for 1625. Station Ops will be beaming over 3 containers of scientific equipment, biological samples in stasis. Check your manifest. You pull up the manifest on your secondary screen. 3 standard cargo containers, Class C biological containment, dimensions, and mass within normal parameters for transport. The containers are coded yellow, indicating living but non-sapient material in suspended animation. Not dangerous, but requiring care to maintain the stasis fields during transport. Acknowledged bridge, Transporter Room 3, ready for cargo transport at 1625. Cargo transports are different from personnel transports in subtle but important ways. The tolerance for variance is slightly higher. You don't need quantum-level precision to reassemble a container in exactly the right molecular structure, though you still maintain high standards. But cargo doesn't complain if the transport takes an extra second, doesn't feel the momentary disorientation that some people experience during materialization. You configure the system for cargo operations, adjusting the pattern buffer allocation to handle the larger mass and the simpler molecular structure of non-living material. The biological samples inside the containers are in stasis, their metabolic processes suspended, so they won't be affected by the transport's quantum effects. Still, you verify that the biofilter is configured to maintain their stasis fields during the beam over. At 1625 precisely, Station Ops hails you. Station Ops to Transport Room 3. 3 containers ready for transport, energizing on your command. Acknowledged, locking onto your cargo pad now. The targeting scanners show 3 distinct masses on the station's cargo pad, their dimensions matching the manifest exactly. You configure pads 1, 3 and 5 to receive them, spreading them across the platform rather than clustering them, which gives you better monitoring of each container's materialization. Energizing, you announce, engaging the transport cycle. The familiar hum builds, but deeper this time. Cargo transports use more power than personnel transports, moving more mass through the pattern buffer. The sparkle effect appears on all 3 pads simultaneously, the containers taking shape from energy back into matter. The materialization is smooth, the progress indicators climbing steadily, and within 5.8 seconds all 3 containers stand solid on the pads. You verify their integrity. The stasis field indicators on each container show green, the containment seals are unbroken, the mass readings match the manifest exactly. Perfect transport, no complications. Transport complete, Station Ops. 3 containers received, integrity verified. Acknowledged, Transport Room 3, Station Ops out. You log the cargo transport with the same thoroughness as the personnel transport. Time, origin, destination, manifest reference, container specifications, system performance. The biological samples will remain on the pads until someone from the science department comes to retrieve them. You note their location and tag them in the system so that security will know they're accounted for. The doors slide open and Lieutenant Commander Solis from the science department enters, PADD in hand, and a slightly distracted expression that scientists often wear when they're thinking about their research rather than their immediate surroundings. Ensign Riley, she says, focusing on you. I'm here for the biological samples from the station. All ready for you, Commander. Pads 1, 3 and 5. Stasis fields maintained throughout transport. All containment seals intact. You gesture toward the platform, where the 3 containers wait patiently. Solis steps up to the nearest container and runs a scanner over it, checking readings that you assume make sense to someone with her scientific background. She nods, satisfied, then taps her comm badge. Solis to Science Lab 2. Send a cargo team to Transporter Room 3. We have the samples from the station. On our way, Commander. While you wait for the cargo team, Solis makes small talk, asking about transport conditions, mentioning that these samples represent 3 weeks of careful collection work at the station, explaining that they contain microorganisms from the station's hydroponics bay that show interesting adaptive properties. You listen politely, making appropriate responses, but mostly you're performing the subtle monitoring that transporter operators do constantly, watching the displays for any changes, listening to the hum of the equipment for any variation in tone that might indicate developing problems. The cargo team arrives, 2 science technicians with an anti-grav cart. They load the containers efficiently, secure them properly, and depart with professional courtesy. Solis thanks you for the careful transport and follows them out. You're alone again, and the transporter room settles back into its quiet operational state. The pattern buffer temperature has dropped slightly, down to 0.68% above nominal, the brief cooling from lower usage. You note this in your running log, maintaining the continuous record of system performance that will help engineering predict when maintenance will be needed. The next scheduled transport isn't until 1700, 32 minutes from now. You use the time to review the evening schedule more carefully, noting which transports might require special attention or preparation. The captain's authorization for shore leave means you'll have 3 engineers departing at 1900, which will be a triple simultaneous transport. Not complicated, but requiring attention to coordinate all 3 patterns through the buffer at once. You also see that Lieutenant T'Pral has requested transport to the station at 1730 for a meeting with the research director. T'Pral is Vulcan, which means the transport will be absolutely routine. Vulcans don't experience transport anxiety the way some species do, and they appreciate efficiency over conversation. The chronometer shows 1638 now, 22 minutes until the next transport. You pull up the technical manual on your pad, not because you need to study, but because reviewing transporter theory keeps your mind engaged during the quiet periods. You've read this particular manual dozens of times, but there's always something new to notice, some subtle implication you missed before. The section on pattern buffer theory is particularly fascinating. The explanation of how the buffer holds a person's complete pattern at the quantum level, storing not just the position of every atom, but also the quantum states that make those atoms uniquely assembled into the person being transported. It's the most sophisticated data storage system in Federation technology, and it exists solely to hold information for the few seconds between dematerialization and rematerialization. The hum of the buffer continues its steady song, and you let yourself sink into the rhythm of the shift. Transport, log, wait. Transport, log, wait. It's meditative work when you let it be. Each cycle identical to the last, each one requiring full attention, but not complicated thought. Your hands know where the controls are. Your eyes know what the displays should show. Your ears know what sounds are normal and which would indicate problems. This is what transporter operation is, really. Not exciting adventures or dramatic emergencies, but the steady, reliable movement of people and cargo from one place to another, logged and verified and maintained with careful attention to safety and precision. The extraordinary made mundane through routine, the impossible made ordinary through repetition. The intercom will chirp again when the next transport is ready, and you'll perform the same sequence again. Verify, lock, energize, monitor, confirm, log, and then again, and again. All through the evening, all through the night, maintaining the continuous circulation of personnel and materials that keeps a starship functioning. You settle deeper into the chair, watching the displays, listening to the equipment, waiting patiently for the next transport to begin. During the quiet periods between scheduled transports, your mind often wanders to the broader context of where you fit within the Perseverance's systems. Transporter room. 3 is one of 6 transporter facilities on this Constitution-class vessel, each one positioned strategically to provide coverage for different areas and different operational needs. Transporter Room 1, located on Deck 7, is the VIP facility. Larger pads, slightly more sophisticated finishes, used primarily for diplomatic functions and high-ranking officer transports. You've operated that room twice during special circumstances, and while the controls are identical to Room 3, the atmosphere is somehow different. More formal, more watched, more conscious of protocol. Transporter Room 2 handles most of the routine cargo operations, with reinforced pads designed to handle heavier loads and more frequent cycling. The operators there, Lieutenant Morrison on Alpha Shift and Ensign Park on Gamma, spend most of their time beaming supplies and equipment rather than people. Different challenges, different rhythms to their work. Rooms 4, 5 and 6 are distributed across the ship to provide redundancy and coverage. If one room develops problems, the others can handle the load. You've worked in all of them during your rotation through the Transporter Operations Division, learning their subtle differences. Room 4's pattern buffer runs slightly cooler than the others. Room 5 has a particularly sensitive biofilter that sometimes flags contaminants that other rooms would pass. Room 6's targeting scanners were recently recalibrated and now lock onto coordinates 0.02 seconds faster than specified in the technical manual. But Room 3 is your primary assignment, and over 2 years you've developed a relationship with this particular transporter that goes beyond mere familiarity. You know its quirks. The way Pad 4's materialization effect is slightly brighter than the others due to a variation in emitter calibration that's within acceptable parameters but noticeable to someone who watches hundreds of transports. You know that the pattern buffer's temperature reading is more stable on Room 3 than on the other transporters, making it easier to predict when it might need cooling cycles. The room itself is positioned on Deck 6, amidships on the port side, with easy access to the main corridor networks that connect to crew quarters, laboratories, and cargo bays. The location was chosen for optimal power distribution from the ship's main energizer. Transporter rooms require massive amounts of power during operation, and positioning them strategically across the Perseverance helps balance the load on the power grid. Above you, Deck 5 contains more crew quarters and the secondary science labs. Below you, Deck 7 houses engineering workshops and more cargo storage. The transporters are deliberately placed in middle decks, not too close to the bridge where combat damage might be more likely, not too far from main areas where response time would increase. Through the bulkheads, if you concentrate, you can sometimes feel the subtle vibration of the ship's warp engines. You're not actually at warp right now. Standard orbit doesn't require faster than light velocity, but the engines are online, maintaining power generation for all ship systems, including your transporters. The engines create a constant, low-frequency hum that becomes part of the background after you've served on a ship for a while, so familiar that you only notice it when it changes or stops. The intercom chirps, pulling you back from thoughts about the ship's layout. Bridge to Transporter Room 3. Transporter Room 3, go ahead. Riley, we have an unscheduled transport request. Lieutenant Carson needs immediate beam up from the station. Medical emergency, non-critical, but requiring prompt attention. Stand by for coordinates. Your hands are already moving, configuring the system for emergency transport protocol, even as you respond. Acknowledged, Bridge. Transporter Room 3 standing by. Do we need medical personnel standing by? Negative. Carson is ambulatory. Minor injury that sickbay wants to treat aboard ship rather than at the station's medical facility. Station Ops is transferring him to their pad now. The targeting scanners lock onto the station's emergency transport pad, separate from the normal pads, reserved for exactly these kinds of urgent but non-critical situations. You see Carson's biosignature appear on the pad, and the computer flags a minor anomaly in his cardiovascular readings. Elevated heart rate, slightly irregular rhythm. Not life-threatening, but clearly something that needs medical attention. "I have lock," you report, energizing. The transport sequence initiates, and you watch Carson materialize on pad 3 with slightly more attention than normal. Emergency transports are still routine from a technical standpoint, but the medical context means you're extra vigilant for any transport-related complications that might compound Carson's existing condition. He materializes smoothly, a human male in his 30s, holding his left arm against his chest, his face showing obvious discomfort. But he's standing, conscious, breathing normally except for the slightly elevated rate from whatever injury he's sustained. "Welcome back, Lieutenant," you say, already tapping your comm badge. "Riley to sickbay. Lieutenant Carson is aboard via Transporter Room 3. Minor medical situation. Patient is ambulatory." Sickbay acknowledges, sending medical to collect the patient. Carson steps down from the pad carefully, still favouring his arm. "Thanks, Ensign. Stupid accident in the station's cargo bay. Tried to catch a falling container and sprained my shoulder pretty badly. Dr. Yang at the station said our sickbay would be better equipped for the deep tissue regeneration. Glad we could get you back quickly. Medical is on the way." You log the emergency transport with full detail, unscheduled, medical context, patient condition noted, all biosignatures recorded. Emergency transports generate additional paperwork even when they're relatively minor, creating a record that medical personnel can review if questions arise about the patient's condition. The medical team arrives within 2 minutes, fast response typical of Starfleet medical operations. They assess Carson briefly in the transporter room, then escort him towards sickbay. You return to your console, completing the log entry, and noting that the emergency transport required 0.3% more pattern buffer capacity than a standard transport due to Carson's elevated biorhythms. The buffer temperature has climbed slightly. Now it's 4%, above nominal, a minor increase from the unexpected transport. You note it in the system log, but don't call engineering. It's still well within acceptable range, and the buffer will cool naturally over the next few minutes. The chronometer shows 16:53. The emergency transport consumed 7 minutes that you'd otherwise have spent reviewing manuals or monitoring routine systems. Now you have 7 minutes until the next scheduled transport, enough time to verify that all systems return to normal parameters after Carson's beam-up. You run a quick diagnostic, phase transition coils still at 99.8% efficiency, targeting scanners properly calibrated, biofilter status nominal with no accumulated contamination, emitter array showing all green indicators. The emergency transport didn't stress any systems beyond normal operating ranges. Good. Emergency transports shouldn't create problems, but it's always worth verifying. The Perseverance is now carrying everyone who should be aboard for the evening duty rotation. The station holds a reduced complement of science personnel, continuing their research, with regular scheduled transports planned to rotate new teams down and bring completed rotations back. It's the kind of steady, predictable traffic that transporter operations handles dozens of times per day. Nothing exciting, nothing memorable, just the routine movement of personnel that keeps exploration and research functioning. You check the next transport on the schedule. Ensign Williams, departing for the station at 1700, scheduled for a 12-hour rotation, providing engineering support to the station's environmental systems. Williams is listed as having made this rotation 4 times before, so he'll know the routine: step on the pad, wait for transport, step off at the station, and report to whoever is coordinating the engineering support. The pattern buffer temperature begins its slow decline again, 0.73%, matching where it was before Carson's transport. The cooling is automatic, managed by the buffer's thermal regulation systems, but you watch it anyway, maintaining awareness of every system's status in that continuous monitoring that defines transporter operation. The intercom stays quiet. The Perseverance continues its standard orbit. Research station Kepler-7 rotates peacefully below, its scientists analysing stellar data, while you prepare to move one more engineer from ship to station, continuing the circulation of personnel and purpose that keeps Starfleet functioning across the galaxy. 7 minutes until the next transport. Enough time to breathe, to settle, to let the routine rhythm of the work carry you forward into the evening ahead. At precisely 1700 hours, Ensign Williams arrives at Transporter Room 3, carrying an engineering toolkit and wearing the slightly resigned expression of someone beginning a 12-hour shift that will involve maintaining environmental systems. Not glamorous work, but necessary work that engineering personnel perform with quiet competence. "Evening, Ensign Riley Barkino," Williams says, stepping up to pad 3 without needing to be directed. He's done this enough times to know the routine. Transport to station engineering section. Same coordinates as last rotation. You verify the coordinates in the system. Yes, the station's engineering deck. Pad 2, coordinates already locked from Williams' previous transports. The computer maintains records of frequent destinations, making repeat transports more efficient by eliminating the need to manually input the same coordinates multiple times. All set, Williams. Any special equipment in that toolkit that I should account for? Negative, just standard diagnostic gear, nothing that requires special transport configuration. You make note of the toolkit anyway. Standard procedure to log any carried items, even routine ones. The system scans the toolkit automatically during transport, verifying that it contains only what Williams claims and flagging any unexpected materials that might require special handling. "Ready when you are," Williams says, settling into a comfortable standing position on the pad. You begin the transport sequence, targeting lock confirmed, coordinates verified, biofilter active, pattern buffer ready. Transporting now. Williams dematerializes in the characteristic sparkle, his pattern captured by the phase transition coils and stored briefly in the buffer before being transmitted to the station's transporter system. The handoff between the Perseverance and the station is seamless. Both transporters are Starfleet standard equipment designed to work together with quantum precision. Williams' pattern moves from your buffer to the station's targeting scanners and then to their materialization stage, the whole process taking 4.6 seconds. Station Ops confirms receipt of Ensign Williams, your display shows. Transport complete, no anomalies. You log the transport methodically. Time, personnel, destination, system performance, power consumption. The pattern buffer temperature ticked up slightly during the transport but is already cooling again. The thermal management system maintaining stability automatically. The next transport isn't scheduled until 17:30, 30 minutes away. These gaps between scheduled transports are when you perform the routine maintenance tasks that keep the transporter system operating smoothly even when it's not actively beaming people around. You pull up the maintenance checklist on your secondary display, a schedule of periodic tasks that don't require taking the transporter offline but should be completed regularly throughout the shift. First item, verify emitter calibration on all 48 emitters around the 6 transport pads. The verification is automated, you initiate the sequence, and the computer tests each emitter in rapid succession, confirming that each one is producing the correct field strength and properly synchronized with the others. The process takes 90 seconds, during which each emitter activates briefly in a test pattern that creates a faint shimmer in the air above the pads. It's not enough power to actually transport anything, just enough to verify that the emitters are functioning within specifications. The results display in a grid showing all 48 emitters, all green, all nominal, all ready for the next transport cycle. You log the verification with the timestamp, adding another line to the continuous record of system health that engineering reviews monthly to predict when components might need replacement or repair. Second maintenance item: update the biofilters pathogen database. Starfleet Medical distributes database updates every 48 hours containing information on newly discovered organisms that the filter should screen for. The update download started automatically at 1600 when your shift began, and now it's completed, waiting for your authorization to install. You review the update summary: 12 new viral strains, 6 bacterial variants, 3 parasitic organisms, and updated screening parameters for 2 previously known pathogens that have shown mutation patterns. Nothing dramatic, just a steady accumulation of biological knowledge that Starfleet Medical collects from ships and stations across the Federation. You authorize the installation, and the biofilter incorporates the new data seamlessly. The process takes 8 seconds, during which the filter temporarily suspends new transports, but you're between scheduled operations, so there's no impact on service. The filter confirms installation and returns to active status, now slightly better equipped to protect the crew from whatever biological threats might lurk in the galaxy. Log entry: 1707, biofilter database updated, medical database version 7734.12 installed successfully, all screening parameters nominal. Third maintenance item: review pattern buffer defragmentation status. The buffer stores transport patterns in a quantum matrix that can become inefficient if not periodically optimized. Think of it like defragmenting a computer hard drive, except you're reorganizing the storage space where people's molecular patterns briefly exist. The system performs this optimization automatically during low usage periods, and your job is to verify that it's keeping up with demand. The status display shows the buffer at 94% optimization, well within acceptable range. Below 85% would require manual intervention, possibly scheduling downtime for a full defragmentation cycle. But at 94%, the buffer is handling its data efficiently and will continue to do so for weeks before needing attention. You note the optimization level in your log, adding it to the trend data that helps engineering predict when the buffer might need deeper maintenance. Over time, all buffers slowly become less efficient as the quantum matrix experiences natural degradation from use. This buffer was last fully recalibrated 7 months ago, and based on the current optimization level, it should be good for another 5 months before needing another deep maintenance cycle. The routine maintenance tasks are now complete, and you've still got 18 minutes before the next scheduled transport. You use the time to do what transporter operators do during quiet periods: study, review, maintain awareness of the larger operational context. You pull up the ship's daily operations summary on your PADD. The science department is excited about some stellar phenomena they're observing from orbit, unusual magnetic field fluctuations that might provide insights into star formation. The engineering department completed scheduled maintenance on the Perseverance's deflector array. Security reports, all normal. Medical treated 6 minor injuries and illnesses during the day shift, including Carson's shoulder sprain that required the emergency transport earlier. The ship is operating normally, which means your job is to continue operating normally, ready to transport personnel and cargo whenever required, maintaining the systems that make such transportation possible, logging everything with careful attention to detail that creates the comprehensive record of operations. Outside, through the walls and the viewports that exist in other parts of the Perseverance, Research Station Kepler-7 continues its orbit. The science teams there are gathering data, maintaining their equipment, living the same kind of routine daily existence that you're living aboard the ship. Everyone has their role, everyone performs their function, and the sum of all these individual routines is what makes exploration and research possible. The chronometer shows 17:18, 12 minutes until Lieutenant T. Prowl's transport to the station. You verify that her coordinates are properly loaded and that the targeting scanners have a solid lock on the station's receiving pad. Everything is ready. You settle back in the operator's chair, hands resting lightly on the console edge, watching the displays for any changes that might require attention. The pattern buffer temperature holds steady at 0.69% above nominal. The biofilter shows no accumulated load. The emitters remain calibrated. All systems are green. All systems are ready. All systems are waiting patiently for the next transport to begin. This is the heart of transporter operations, not the transports themselves, which are brief moments of activity, but the long stretches of waiting between transports, maintaining readiness, ensuring that when someone needs to move from here to there, the system is prepared to move them safely and precisely. The hum of the pattern buffer continues its constant song, and you let it fill the quiet spaces of the room, marking time in its steady frequency until the next transport request arrives. At 17:30 exactly, Lieutenant T'Pral enters Transporter Room 3 with the characteristic punctuality that Vulcans bring to everything they do. She's the Perseverance's assistant science officer, and her expression maintains the calm neutrality that Vulcan emotional control produces. Not cold exactly, but deliberately measured and logical. "Ensign Riley," she says, acknowledging you with a slight nod. "I require transport to Research Station, Kepler 7, Science Director's office." You verify the coordinates? Yes, the station's administrative deck, directly to the Science Director's office, rather than the general reception area. Special authorization is already flagged in the system, granting T'Pral direct access to that location. Apparently, the meeting with the Science Director is important enough to bypass normal station check-in procedures. "Coordinates locked, Lieutenant. Ready to transport on your command." T'Pral steps onto pad 4 with economical movement, positioning herself precisely in the center of the pad. Vulcans are naturally inclined toward accuracy, and T'Pral is no exception. She stands with perfect posture, hands loosely at her sides, waiting with that infinite patience that comes from a culture that lives by logic rather than emotional impulse. "I am ready," she states simply. You initiate the transport sequence, and T'Pral dematerializes with the same calm expression she had while standing on the pad. The transport completes smoothly. 4.4 seconds, all systems nominal, pattern integrity perfect. Vulcan physiology is actually easier to transport than human in some ways. Their cardiovascular system is more stable, their metabolism more regulated, creating slightly cleaner patterns in the buffer. "Station confirms receipt of Lieutenant T'Pral," your display shows. "Transport complete." You log the transport and settle back to wait for the next scheduled event. But before you can pull up your pad for more reading, the doors slide open again, and Commander Sarvok enters, the Perseverance's chief engineer, a Vulcan who's been with this vessel for 6 years, and who knows every system aboard with the kind of intimate detail that only decades of engineering experience can provide. "Ensign Riley," Sarvok says in the slightly lower register that characterizes Vulcan male voices. "I am conducting routine inspections of critical systems. Do you have a few moments to discuss Transporter Room 3's operational status?" "Of course, Commander. All systems are currently nominal, though the pattern buffer has been running slightly warm all day, 0.6 to 0.7% above standard temperature." Sarvok nods, clearly already aware of this information. "Yes, I have been monitoring the thermal variance. It is within acceptable parameters, but bears observation. The increased station traffic has elevated buffer usage above typical levels for this duty rotation." He approaches the console, and you step aside slightly to give him better access to the displays. Sarvok's hands move over the controls with practiced familiarity, pulling up diagnostic screens that show deeper technical details than you normally examine during routine operations. His eyes scan the data with the rapid processing that Vulcans are capable of, absorbing complex information streams and synthesizing them into coherent understanding. "The buffer's thermal regulation system is functioning properly," Sarvok observes. "The elevated temperature is purely a function of increased usage rather than any systemic inefficiency. However, I am slightly concerned about the long-term trend. He pulls up a graph showing the buffer's temperature over the past 3 months. You've seen this data before, but watching Sarvok analyze it provides new insight. The trend line shows a very gradual increase, so gradual that day-to-day monitoring wouldn't detect it, but over months it becomes noticeable. You see here, Sarvok indicates with one finger, tracing the trend line, the baseline temperature has increased 0.03% over the past 90 days. This suggests that the buffer's thermal regulation is becoming marginally less efficient over time. Is that normal wear, you ask, genuinely curious about the engineering implications? It is consistent with expected degradation of the thermal exchange crystals in the regulation system. They are rated for 5 years of continuous operation, and this transporter has been in service for 4 years, 7 months. We are approaching the period when thermal regulation efficiency naturally decreases. Should we schedule maintenance? Not immediately. The current degradation rate suggests we have approximately 7 months before thermal regulation reaches the point where performance might be impacted. I will schedule a full thermal system overhaul for next month's maintenance window, which will replace the exchange crystals and restore the system to original specifications. You nod, appreciating the logical approach. This is what good engineering is, not waiting for systems to fail, but monitoring trends and scheduling preventive maintenance before degradation affects operations. Sarvok returns his attention to the console, pulling up additional diagnostic data. Your maintenance logs are thorough and accurate, he comments. This level of detailed record keeping is valuable for engineering analysis. I commend your attention to procedure. Thank you, Commander. I find that keeping detailed logs helps me notice subtle changes in system performance. Indeed, pattern recognition is a critical skill for both transporter operators and engineers. Small changes often presage larger trends. Sarvok closes the diagnostic displays and turns to face you directly. I have no concerns about this transporter's operational status. Continue your current monitoring protocols and inform engineering immediately if the buffer temperature exceeds 0.9% above nominal. Understood, Commander. I'll maintain vigilance. Sarvok nods and heads toward the doors, but pauses before exiting. One additional note, Ensign. Your pre-shift diagnostic procedures are exemplary. Lieutenant Chen mentioned that you consistently complete the most thorough system checks of any operator in the rotation. I consider it important to know the exact state of the system before beginning operations, sir. As do I. Carry on, Ensign Riley. The doors slide closed behind Sarvok, leaving you alone in the transporter room once again. The conversation with the chief engineer leaves you feeling validated. It's satisfying to know that your attention to detail and thorough record keeping is noticed and appreciated by someone with Sarvok's level of expertise. Engineering depends on operators who actually care about the equipment they're running, who see beyond the immediate task to the larger systems that make that task possible. You update your log with a note about Sarvok's inspection and his comments about the thermal regulation system. It's useful information for your own understanding of the transporter's long-term health, and it will help whoever takes over this assignment after you, if you eventually rotate to a different position, understand what to watch for. The chronometer shows 17:48. The next scheduled transport isn't until 18:30, 42 minutes of unstructured time during which you'll maintain readiness while the transporter sits idle, its systems humming quietly, its buffer cooling slowly toward nominal temperature. You pull up the technical manual again, this time turning to the section on thermal regulation systems. Now that Sarvok has explained the degradation pattern, you want to understand the engineering theory behind why thermal exchange crystals wear out over time. The manual explains that the crystals work by transferring heat energy into subspace effectively radiating warmth out of the normal universe. But each heat transfer causes quantum-level stress to the crystal lattice, and over time this stress accumulates until the crystals become less efficient at heat transfer. It's fascinating stuff, the kind of deep technical knowledge that most people never think about when they step onto a transporter pad. They just assume the technology works, without considering the thousands of components and carefully maintained systems that make instantaneous travel possible. But you see behind the curtain, you understand that every transport is a minor miracle of engineering, maintained by people like Sarvok and operated by people like you, all working together to keep the impossible happening routinely, safely, reliably, day after day after day. The hum of the pattern buffer continues, and you settle into the comfortable rhythm of monitoring, waiting, ready for whatever the next transport might bring. The shift reaches its middle phase, that period after the initial burst of early evening transports, but before the late-night quietude sets in. The chronometer shows 1842, and you've handled 3 more transports in the past hour. 2 crew members heading to the station for various duties, and 1 returning from a completed rotation. All routine, all logged with proper detail, all completed without any anomalies worth noting beyond the standard metrics. The pattern buffer temperature has stabilized at 0.67% above nominal, still elevated, but the station traffic has eased slightly, giving the thermal regulation system time to do its work. You've been monitoring the temperature every 10 minutes, creating a trend line in your personal log that shows the gradual cooling. It's not required. The system monitors itself and would alert you to any problems. But the active monitoring keeps you engaged during the quiet periods and helps you develop an intuitive sense of the transporter's normal behavior patterns. The intercom chirps. Bridge to Transporter Room 3. Transporter Room 3, Riley here. Ensign, we have the authorized shore leave transport coming up at 1900 hours. 3 engineering personnel heading to the station for a 36-hour recreational leave. Just confirming you have the authorization logged and you're ready for the triple transport. You verify the details on your display. Yes, Chief Petty Officer Kim, Crewman Rodriguez, and Crewman Chen, all from the engineering division, all authorized for extended leave by the Chief Engineer. Triple simultaneous transport, station's recreational deck, coordinates already locked. Confirmed bridge, authorization verified, triple transport configured and ready for 1900 hours. Acknowledged, bridge out. Triple transports require slightly more attention than single transports. Not because they're particularly difficult, but because you're managing 3 pattern buffers simultaneously. The transporter is designed to handle 6 simultaneous transports without strain, but operator attention gets divided across multiple materialization sequences, and you need to ensure that each person rematerializes properly without focusing so much on one that you miss an anomaly in another. You reconfigure the console for triple simultaneous operation. Pads 2, 4 and 6 will activate together, each one receiving a separate pattern from the buffer. The targeting scanners are already locked onto the station's recreational deck receiving area, which has multiple pads designed exactly for this kind of group transport. At 1857, the 3 engineers arrive at Transporter Room 3 together, carrying small overnight bags and wearing civilian clothes rather than uniforms, standard practice for off-duty shore leave, though technically all Starfleet personnel remain on call even during recreational time. They're chatting among themselves, clearly excited about the prospect of 36 hours away from duty rotations and ship routine. Evening ensigns, Kim says. She's senior among the 3 and naturally takes the lead, ready to beam 3 very eager engineers over to the station's entertainment facilities. All set for you. Chief, pads 2, 4 and 6, please. You gesture to the designated pads. The 3 engineers step onto their assigned pads with practiced ease. All of them have been transported numerous times and know the routine. They continue their conversation while settling into position, Something about a particular restaurant on the station that Kim insists serves the best pasta in the sector. "Ready when you are," Rodriguez says, still smiling from whatever story they were telling. You verify each target log, 3 distinct biosignatures, 3 clear destination coordinates, all systems showing green. Transporting now. Enjoy your shore leave. The triple transport sequence initiates, and all 3 pads activate simultaneously. The characteristic hum builds in 3-part harmony, the emitters around each pad creating their individual annular confinement beams. The sparkle effect appears on all 3 pads at once, and you watch your displays carefully. 3 progress indicators climbing toward completion, 3 pattern buffers holding their assigned patterns, 3 sets of biofilter readings showing normal status. Kim dematerializes smoothly. 4.3 seconds, perfect transport. Rodriguez follows, 4.4 seconds, equally clean. Chen takes slightly longer, 4.7 seconds, but well within normal parameters. The variation is typical. Every person's unique biology creates slightly different transport times, and 0.3 seconds is negligible variance. Station confirms receipt of all 3 personnel, your display shows. Transport complete, no anomalies. You log the triple transport with satisfaction. Coordinating multiple simultaneous patterns requires attention and concentration, and getting it right creates a small sense of accomplishment. The pattern buffer temperature climbed during the triple transport, now at 0.74% above nominal, but it's already beginning its cooling cycle again. The engineering team's departure means the Perseverance is now at minimum crew complement for the current operational status. Enough personnel to maintain all systems and respond to any situations, but reduced from the normal full crew. Shore leave rotations like this happen regularly, giving crew members breaks from the continuous duty cycle that long-duration missions require. Those 3 engineers will spend their 36 hours enjoying the station's recreational facilities, probably eating that pasta Kim was excited about, maybe catching up on sleep in quarters that aren't subject to sudden duty calls. Meanwhile, you'll continue your shift, monitoring the transporter, moving people and cargo, maintaining the steady rhythm of operations that continues whether personnel are on duty or on leave. The next scheduled transport isn't until 2015, another 73 minutes away. The evening is entering its quieter phase, the period when most personnel are either on duty at their assigned stations or off duty in their quarters. Transport requests during this period tend to be cargo movements, the occasional officer with a late meeting, or personnel beginning night shift rotations. You use the time to perform another round of routine checks. Emitter calibration status, still nominal, biofilter contamination level, 0 accumulated load, targeting scanner accuracy, perfect alignment, phase transition, coil efficiency, still at 99.8%. Everything continues operating exactly as it should, which is exactly what you want to see. The chronometer on the console provides a steady reference point, 1912 hours now, almost 5 hours into your shift. Your body has settled into the rhythm of the work, the mild alertness required for monitoring without the intense focus needed during complex transport sequences. You've learned over 2 years that this is the sustainable pace for 8-hour shifts, bursts of concentrated attention during transports, quieter periods of routine monitoring in between, all blending into a flow that carries you through from start to finish without exhaustion. The station rotates slowly in its orbit, visible on the tracking display as a small schematic that updates continuously. Somewhere on that station, Lieutenant T'Pral is meeting with the science director, discussing whatever research data required face-to-face consultation. Somewhere else on the station, those 3 engineers are probably already enjoying their shore leave, grateful for the transporter technology that let them leave the Perseverance and arrive at recreational facilities in less than 5 seconds. And here, in Transporter Room 3, you continue your watch, ready to transport whoever needs to move between ship and station, maintaining the circulation of personnel and purpose that keeps exploration and research functioning across the galaxy. The hum of the pattern buffer provides its constant background, and you settle deeper into your chair, into your shift, into the comfortable routine of operations that will carry you through the remaining 3 hours until the next operator takes over for the night shift. At 2015 hours, the scheduled transport arrives as predicted, but it's not personnel this time. Instead, the request is for a cargo transport, multiple containers of specialized scientific equipment that the station's research team needs for their stellar analysis work. Transporter Room 3, this is Station Ops. We have 4 cargo containers ready for transport to your ship. Manifest is being transferred now. Standard scientific equipment, no special handling required. You pull up the manifest as it appears on your secondary display. 4 containers, each approximately 1 meter cubed, containing various sensor arrays, data processing modules, and calibration equipment. Total mass, 847 kilograms. Well within the transporter's cargo capacity, which can handle up to 40,000 kilograms in a single transport cycle if necessary. Acknowledged Station Ops. Configure your cargo pad for transport. I'll energize on your mark. Cargo transports follow slightly different protocols than personnel transports. The precision requirements are somewhat relaxed. You don't need quantum-level accuracy to reassemble a sensor array, though you still maintain high standards, because damaging equipment through careless transport is unacceptable. But cargo doesn't experience disorientation, doesn't have biological systems that need careful monitoring through the biofilter, doesn't require the same level of immediate attention that a living being demands. You reconfigure the transporter for cargo operations, adjusting the pattern buffer allocation to handle larger mass with slightly lower resolution. The computer knows how to make these adjustments automatically, but you verify each setting anyway. Better to spend an extra 30 seconds confirming configuration than to discover you've transported equipment at the wrong resolution and damaged sensitive components. The targeting scanners lock onto the station's cargo pad, showing 4 distinct masses in the arrangement described by the manifest. The containers are standard Starfleet cargo units, reinforced corners, sealed against vacuum and contamination, clearly labelled with contents and handling instructions. Station Ops, we're locked and ready to receive cargo. Acknowledged, Transporter Room 3, energizing on your mark. Energize. The familiar hum builds, deeper and more resonant than personnel transports. Cargo requires more power to move more mass, and the phase transition coils respond with increased energy output. The 4 containers materialize on pads 1, 2, 3 and 5. You configured the transport to distribute them across the platform rather than clustering them, making it easier to inspect each one independently after arrival. The materialization takes 6.8 seconds, longer than personnel transport due to the greater mass and complexity of the objects being transported. You watch the progress indicators climb steadily, monitoring for any anomalies in the matter stream that might indicate problems with the transport. The sparkle effect fades and the 4 containers stand solid on their assigned pads. You run immediate verification scans. Mass readings match the manifest exactly. No dimensional distortion detected. Container seals intact. No unexpected materials or contamination detected by the sensors. Transport complete, Station Ops. 4 containers received. Integrity verified. Acknowledged, Station Ops out. You log the cargo transports with the same thorough detail you use for personnel transports. Time, origin, destination, manifest reference, mass readings, system performance metrics. The pattern buffer temperature climbed during the cargo transport, up to 0.81% above nominal, but it's still well within acceptable range and already beginning its cooling cycle. The cargo containers will remain on the pads until the science department sends a team to collect them. You tag your location in the system and set an automatic notification to alert you if anyone approaches the platform to retrieve them. Standard security protocol to ensure you're aware of anyone interacting with transported cargo before it's been properly received and logged by its destination department. While you wait for the science team, you pull up the technical specifications for the cargo you just transported. The sensor arrays are sophisticated pieces of equipment, subspace field detectors capable of measuring quantum fluctuations in stellar magnetic fields with extraordinary precision. The data processing modules contain isolinear chips rated for intensive computational analysis. The calibration equipment includes reference emitters that produce known quantum states for verifying sensor accuracy. None of it means much to you beyond general understanding. You're a transporter operator, not a scientist, but you appreciate knowing what you're moving around. Every cargo manifest tells a story about what the Perseverance and its crew are doing, what research they're conducting, what missions they're supporting. These particular containers represent the station's ongoing study of stellar phenomena, which in turn contributes to the Federation's broader understanding of star formation and evolution. The doors slide open, and two science technicians enter with an anti-grav cart. They're clearly expecting the cargo, probably received notification the moment the transport completed. Ensign Riley, the senior technician, acknowledges you with a nod. We're here for the sensor equipment from the station. Pads 1, 2, 3 and 5, you gesture toward the containers. All integrity verified, ready for retrieval. The technicians move efficiently, scanning each container to verify its contents match what they're expecting, then loading them onto the anti-grav cart with practiced ease. The cart's suspensors engage with a soft hum, lifting the 847 kilograms of equipment as if it weighs nothing. Federation technology at work, making the difficult routine, the impossible ordinary. Thanks for the careful transport, the senior technician says. This equipment is pretty sensitive, and we appreciate operators who take cargo seriously. Just doing the job properly, you reply. Let me know if anything seems damaged when you unpack them. Will do. The technicians guide the cart toward the doors, and you're alone in the transporter room again. The pattern buffer temperature has dropped to 0.75% above nominal. The evening's transport operations have kept the buffer working steadily, but never pushing it beyond acceptable thermal limits. You note the temperature in your continuous log, maintaining the detailed record that helps engineering predict maintenance needs. The chronometer shows twin-as 33 hours, almost 6 hours into your shift now, and the evening is settling into its late phase, the period when transport requests become less frequent and the gaps between operations grow longer. You've handled 14 transports so far tonight, 7 personnel, 1 emergency medical return, 3 cargo operations, and that triple simultaneous transport for shore leave. Respectable numbers that represent solid service to the Perseverance's mission. The pattern buffer continues its quiet work, cooling gradually toward baseline temperature. The biofilter maintains its vigilant screening. The targeting scanners hold their perfect calibration. All systems remain green. All systems remain ready. All systems await the next transport whenever it might be requested. You settle back in the operator's chair, watching the displays, listening to the familiar hum of the equipment, maintaining that state of relaxed alertness that will carry you through the remaining hours of the shift. At 2104 hours, the doors slide open and Lieutenant Commander Harrigan enters. The Perseverance's second officer, a human woman in her 40s with the bearing of someone who spent 20 years in Starfleet and learned to project calm authority without conscious effort. Ensign Riley, she says with a slight smile. I need transport back to the station. The captain asked me to deliver his formal response to the science director regarding their research proposal. You note the pad she's carrying, presumably containing the captain's response. Ready to transport you whenever you are, Commander. Harrigan steps up to pad 2 with the casual confidence of senior officers who've been transported more times than they could count. Standard coordinates to the science director's office. I'm expected, so they should have cleared me for direct access. You verify the coordinates and the security authorization. Yes, command level clearance, direct transport to the administrative deck. Everything is properly flagged in the system. All set, Commander. Transporting now. Harrigan dematerializes smoothly, the transport completing in 4.4 seconds. You log the transport and settle back to wait, knowing from experience that senior officer meetings often run longer than scheduled, so Harrigan might be at the station for a while before requesting return transport. The pattern buffer temperature continues its gradual descent, now at 0.71% above nominal. The thermal regulation system is slowly winning its battle against the accumulated heat from the evening's operations, bringing the buffer back toward its baseline operating temperature. You track the cooling rate in your log, noting that it matches the expected thermal performance curves from the technical manual. While the transporter room is quiet, you take the opportunity to review some of the more advanced technical documentation. There's a section in the manual about emergency transport protocols, procedures for transporting personnel from dangerous situations, from environments with heavy interference, from conditions that make standard transport difficult or risky. The protocols cover scenarios you hope never to encounter: transport through plasma storms, beam out from ships losing structural integrity, emergency extraction from hostile fire situations. Each protocol involves specific modifications to the transport sequence, adjustments to the annular confinement beam, different biofilter settings, altered pattern buffer allocation. It's complex material, and while you've studied it during training, reviewing it periodically helps keep the knowledge fresh. One scenario particularly catches your attention: transport during subspace disruption. When certain types of stellar phenomena create subspace distortions, the matter stream becomes unstable, requiring real-time adjustment to the phase transition coils to maintain pattern integrity. The operator has to manually modulate the beam frequency, matching it to the subspace interference pattern, while simultaneously maintaining lock on the transport subject. It's delicate work, requiring split-second decisions and precise manual control. The simulation training for this scenario is notoriously difficult. Most operators need multiple attempts before successfully completing an emergency transport through simulated subspace disruption. You passed on your second attempt at the academy, and you still remember the intensity of focus required, the way your hands trembled slightly afterward from the sustained concentration. Hopefully, you'll never need those skills in actual operation. Research Station Kepler-7 orbits a stable star with minimal subspace distortion, and this sector of space is well mapped and considered safe for standard operations. But Starfleet trains for worst-case scenarios because sometimes those scenarios actually happen, and when they do, lives depend on operators who know their equipment well enough to push it beyond standard parameters. The intercom chirps, interrupting your technical reading. Station Ops to Transporter Room 3. Lieutenant Commander Harrigan, ready for return transport. That was quick, only 20 minutes. Either the meeting was brief, or Harrigan is returning for something, and will transport back to the station again later. Acknowledged, Station Ops, locked onto Commander Harrigan, energizing. The transport sequence initiates, and Harrigan materializes on Pad 2, carrying the same pad she left with. She steps down from the platform and pauses near the console. "Quick meeting, Commander?" you ask politely. "Very quick." The science director agreed to every point in the captain's response without discussion. Makes me suspicious, honestly. When scientists agree too easily, they're usually not telling you something they think you'll object to. Harrigan shakes her head with wry amusement. "But that's above your pay grade and mine. Just needed to deliver the captain's response and confirm their agreement verbally." "Will you need transport back to the station later?" "Not tonight. I'm due on the bridge for the night shift command rotation at 2200. She glances at the chronometer. which gives me 43 minutes to grab dinner and review the duty roster. Thank you for the efficient transport, Ensign. Anytime, Commander. Harrigan exits, leaving you alone again, with the steady hum of the transporter. You log both transports, outbound and inbound, noting the brief duration between them. The round trip consumed less than 30 minutes, including the meeting, a testament to how transporter technology compresses travel time. In earlier eras, moving between a ship and a station would have required shuttle flights, docking procedures, airlocks, processes that took hours and required coordination between multiple personnel. Now it takes 5 seconds and one operator. The pattern buffer temperature has dropped to 0.68% above nominal. The cooling continues steadily, and at this rate, the buffer should return to baseline temperature within another hour, assuming no major transport operations occur in the meantime. You check the remaining scheduled transports for the shift, only 2 more noted on the board. Lieutenant Taipral returning from the station at 22:30 hours, and a cargo transport of completed research data at 2300 hours. Both routine operations that won't require unusual preparation or attention. The chronometer shows 2127 hours. You're more than 6.5 hours into the shift now, and your body has settled into that particular state of relaxed alertness that characterizes the middle to late portion of a duty rotation. Not tired yet, but definitely aware that you've been working for a while, that your attention has been engaged continuously even during the quiet periods between transports. You stand up from the operator's chair and perform a series of stretches, reaching overhead, bending to touch your toes, rolling your shoulders and neck. Sitting for extended periods isn't ideal for the human body, even in the comfortable chairs that Starfleet provides. The stretches help prevent stiffness and maintain circulation, keeping you alert and ready to respond if sudden transport requests come through. The transporter room is slightly cooler than the corridors, temperature regulated to help manage the heat generated by the pattern buffer and phase transition coils. You've adapted to the temperature over 2 years of operating this room, but new operators sometimes complain about the chill during their first few shifts. Now it feels normal, almost comfortable, another aspect of the environment that you've incorporated into your baseline expectations. Outside, through the walls and the decks above and below, the Perseverance continues its standard operations. On the bridge, officers monitor sensors and maintain the ship's orbit. In engineering, technicians maintain the warp core and power distribution systems. In sick bay, medical personnel treat minor injuries and conduct routine health checks. In crew quarters, off-duty personnel rest, read, socialise, or pursue personal interests. And here, in Transporter Room 3, you maintain watch over the technology that allows all those other functions to interact with Research Station Kepler-7, that lets personnel move between ship and station as easily as walking through a door, that makes exploration and research possible by collapsing distance into negligible inconvenience. The hum of the pattern buffer continues, and you return to your chair, to your console, to your watch, waiting patiently for the next transport request, ready to serve whenever called upon, maintaining the steady rhythm that will carry you through to the end of the shift. At 2200 hours, exactly, the console chirps an automated reminder, scheduled biofilter diagnostic required. This is one of the critical routine maintenance tasks that can't be postponed or skipped. The biofilter's pathogen screening capability must be verified every 12 hours without exception. Lives depend on this system working properly, screening out harmful organisms before they can spread through the ship or station populations. You initiate the diagnostic sequence and the console displays the testing protocol. The biofilter will run through a comprehensive self-test, checking every screening parameter against known test patterns, verifying that the quantum resolution filters can detect particles down to the size of individual viruses, confirming that the pattern analysis algorithms are functioning correctly. The diagnostic takes approximately 8 minutes to complete, during which time the transporter cannot perform active operations. The biofilter is temporarily unavailable while it runs internal tests. You've scheduled this diagnostic for 2200 specifically because the evening transport schedule shows minimal activity during this hour, minimizing the chance that someone will request transport while the system is offline. The console displays the diagnostic progress. Biofilter Level 1 Diagnostic Initializing, testing quantum resolution filters, testing pathogen database integrity, testing pattern analysis algorithms, testing contamination detection systems. You watch the progress bar advance slowly across the display. Biofilter diagnostics are thorough and methodical, testing each component of the system independently before verifying that they all work together correctly. The quantum resolution filters are tested first. These are the sensors that can detect individual molecules and determine whether they match known pathogen profiles. Quantum resolution filters pass, all filters operating at 99.7% sensitivity. The pathogen database integrity test follows, verifying that the medical database you installed earlier is properly integrated and that all screening parameters are correctly loaded. The database contains billions of pathogen profiles, everything from common cold viruses to exotic alien organisms encountered during exploration. The biofilter compares incoming transport patterns against this database, flagging any matches and either filtering them out or alerting medical personnel depending on the threat level. Pathogen database integrity. Pass. Version 7.734.12 installed correctly, all profiles accessible. The pattern analysis algorithms are tested next. These are the software routines that examine the transport pattern during materialization, looking for anything unusual or potentially harmful. The algorithms are sophisticated enough to detect new pathogens that aren't in the database yet, based on general characteristics that indicate biological threat. Pattern analysis algorithms pass, all detection heuristics functioning normally. Finally, the contamination detection systems are tested, sensors that measure the accumulated particle load on the filter itself. Over time, as the biofilter screens out pathogens, trace amounts of filtered material accumulate in the system. When this accumulation reaches certain thresholds, the filter needs cleaning or replacement. The diagnostic verifies that these sensors are working correctly and that current contamination levels are within acceptable range. Contamination detection systems. Pass, current particle load 0, filter capacity 100%. The diagnostic completes and the console displays the summary results. Biofilter Level 1 diagnostic complete. All systems nominal. No anomalies detected. Filter ready for operations. You log the diagnostic results with careful detail. 2200 hours. Biofilter Level 1 diagnostic completed successfully. All systems passed testing. Filter operating at 99.7% sensitivity with 0 particle accumulation. Next diagnostic scheduled for 1000 hours tomorrow. The biofilter returns to active status, its green indicator showing ready on the main console display. The transporter is once again fully operational, all safety systems armed and ready to screen out any biological threats that might attempt to piggyback on transport patterns. You take a moment to appreciate the sophistication of the biofilter system. It works invisibly, requiring no input from transport subjects, creating no noticeable delay in the transport process. But behind that invisibility lies incredibly complex technology. Quantum-level sensors, massive pathogen databases, sophisticated pattern analysis, all working together in real time to protect crew health. There are documented cases of biofilters saving lives, transporting personnel from infected planets without bringing the infections aboard ship, screening out parasites that were attempting to use transport as a vector for spreading to new hosts. The filter has probably saved your life, specifically, at some point, though you'd never know it because threats were detected and eliminated before you were ever aware they existed. The chronometer shows 22:08 now. The diagnostic consumed its scheduled time exactly, and you're back in normal operations with just over 90 minutes remaining in your shift. The next transport request isn't scheduled until 22:30, when Lieutenant T'Pral returns from her meeting at the station. The pattern buffer temperature has continued its slow descent, now at 0.64% above nominal, approaching baseline temperature. The thermal regulation system has nearly completed its work, bringing the buffer back towards standard operating conditions. You note the temperature in your log, maintaining the continuous trend data that helps predict long-term system performance. You use the remaining time before T'Pral's transport to review the evening's work comprehensively. Pulling up the master log, you see the complete record of the shift's operations. 17 transports total. You'd lost count slightly earlier. A mix of personnel and cargo, all completed without anomalies or complications. The pattern buffer has performed well, despite running slightly warm. The biofilter has screened every transport without detecting any threats. The targeting scanners have maintained perfect lock accuracy. The emitters have operated flawlessly. It's been a good shift, not exciting, not memorable, but exactly what transporter operations should be. Reliable, precise, routine. The extraordinary made ordinary through technology and training, the impossible made routine through careful attention to procedure and detail. You settle back in the chair, watching the displays show green indicators across all systems, listening to the quiet hum of equipment maintaining readiness, waiting patiently for Lieutenant T'Pral to complete her meeting and request return transport to the Perseverance. The steady rhythm of operations continues, carrying you through the remaining portion of the shift toward eventual handoff to the night shift operator, who will take over when your 8 hours are complete. At 22:27 hours, 3 minutes early, which is typical for Vulcan punctuality, the intercom chirps. Station ops to Transporter Room 3. Lieutenant T'Pral ready for return transport. You initiate the transport sequence immediately, appreciating the efficiency. Acknowledged, locked onto Lieutenant T'Pral, energizing. T'Pral materializes on pad 4 with the same calm expression she had when departing almost 5 hours earlier. The transport completes in 4.3 seconds, fractionally faster than average, which you attribute to Vulcan biological stability, creating particularly clean patterns in the buffer. Welcome back, Lieutenant. I trust your meeting was productive? It was satisfactory, T'Pral responds, stepping down from the pad with her characteristic economical movement. The science director has agreed to share preliminary research data that may be relevant to our current mission. I will need to analyze the data before determining its actual value, but initial indications are promising. Glad to hear it. You log the transport, noting T'Pral's return time and the smooth completion of the operation. T'Pral pauses near the console, observing the displays with the kind of casual but thorough attention that trained scientists bring to any technical system they encounter. The pattern buffer is operating within normal parameters, I observe, though slightly elevated in temperature compared to baseline specifications. Yes, ma'am. It's been running 0.6 to 0.8% above nominal all day due to increased station traffic. Engineering is aware and considers it well within acceptable range. Indeed, the thermal variance is consistent with expected performance under elevated usage conditions. T'Pral's gaze moves across the other displays, absorbing information with typical Vulcan efficiency. Your diagnostic protocols appear thorough and properly documented. Thank you, Lieutenant. I try to maintain comprehensive logs. A logical approach. Detailed records facilitate pattern recognition and predictive maintenance. T'Pral nods slightly, the Vulcan equivalent of expressing approval, and heads toward the doors. "Good evening, Ensign Riley. Continue your excellent work." The doors slide closed, leaving you alone in the transporter room once again. The brief interaction with T'Pral was pleasant in its own way. Vulcans don't engage in unnecessary small talk, but when they do offer comments, those comments are genuine and considered. Her observation about your thorough diagnostic protocols was a real compliment, even delivered in the matter-of-fact tone that characterizes Vulcan communication. You update the log with T'Pral's return transport, noting the time and the successful completion. That leaves just one more scheduled transport on the board, the cargo operation at 2300 hours, receiving research data from the station. After that, the shift enters its final hour, the quiet period before handoff to the night shift operator. The chronometer shows 22:34 hours. You have 26 minutes of unstructured time before the final scheduled transport. The pattern buffer temperature has dropped to 0.61% above nominal, almost back to baseline now. The cooling has been steady and predictable, following the expected thermal curves exactly as the technical manual describes. You stand and perform another series of stretches, working out the stiffness that accumulates from sitting for extended periods. The transporter room allows enough space for basic movement. You can walk around the console, do some simple exercises, move your body enough to prevent the discomfort that pure sedentary work would create. While moving, you think about the evening's work from a broader perspective. 17 transports might not sound like much, but multiply that across 6 transporter rooms operating continuously, across 3 shifts per day, across 365 days per year, and you start to comprehend the scale of transporter operations aboard the Perseverance. This ship alone processes tens of thousands of transports annually, each one requiring the same careful attention, the same precise execution, the same thorough logging. And the Perseverance is just one ship. The Federation operates thousands of vessels, each with their own transporter systems, their own operators, their own continuous flow of personnel and cargo moving through the matter stream. The cumulative number of transports across the entire fleet must reach into the billions annually. Billions of instances where people trust their patterns to quantum precision and operator expertise. It's a sobering thought. Every transport you perform is routine to you, but it's someone's trust that you're handling. They step onto that pad believing that you'll rematerialize them correctly, that you've checked the systems properly, that you're paying attention to the diagnostic displays and ready to abort if anything goes wrong. That trust is sacred in its way, not religious sacred, but sacred in the sense of being a responsibility that matters deeply. You return to the operator's chair, settling back into position for the final scheduled transport of the shift. The pattern buffer continues its quiet hum. The biofilter shows its green ready indicator. The targeting scanners maintain their calibration. All systems are prepared, all systems are waiting, all systems are ready to perform one more transport before the shift concludes. 22 minutes until the cargo operation. Enough time to sit quietly, to center yourself, to appreciate the peculiar satisfaction that comes from work well done, from systems properly maintained, from responsibilities carefully executed. The hum of the equipment fills the silence, and you let it wash over you, marking time in steady frequencies until the next transport begins. At 2300 hours precisely, the intercom chirps with perfect timing. Station ops to Transporter Room 3. Final cargo transport of the evening. 1 data storage unit containing compiled research data. Standard handling, no special requirements. You pull up the manifest, a single container, smaller than the earlier scientific equipment, containing isolinear storage chips with the station's accumulated research data from the past 3 months. The data will be uploaded to the Perseverance's main computer for analysis and eventual transmission to Starfleet Scientific Division. Acknowledged, station ops, locked on your cargo pad, ready to receive on your mark. You configure the system for single container cargo transport, simpler than the earlier multi-container operation, requiring minimal pattern buffer allocation. The targeting scanners show the container clearly positioned on the station's cargo pad, its dimensions and mass within expected parameters. Energizing, the transport sequence initiates, and the single container materializes on pad 3. The sparkle effect seems almost perfunctory for such a small cargo operation, 4.1 seconds from start to finish, the container solidifying into being with its carrying handles visible and its status indicators showing green. You verify the transport, mass matches, manifest, dimensions correct, no contamination detected, container seals intact. The research data inside is presumably valuable, representing 3 months of careful observation and analysis by the station's science teams. But from your perspective, it's just another cargo operation, distinguished only by being the final scheduled transport of your shift. Transport complete, station ops, data container received and verified. Acknowledged. That concludes our scheduled traffic with your ship for this duty rotation. Station ops out. You log the cargo transport, completing the documentation with the same thorough detail you've maintained all evening. Then you tag the container's location and set a notification for when the science department comes to retrieve it. Probably not until morning, which means it will sit on pad 3 through the night shift and into tomorrow's alpha shift. The chronometer shows 2304 hours. Your shift officially ends at 2400, which means you have 56 minutes remaining. But the schedule shows no further planned transports, which means the rest of the shift will be quiet monitoring, system checks, and preparing for handoff to the night shift operator. The pattern buffer temperature has finally returned to baseline, now reading exactly nominal, the thermal regulation system having completed its gradual cooling throughout the evening. You note this in the log with satisfaction. The buffer's performance has been exemplary despite the elevated usage, demonstrating the robust design and quality maintenance that keeps these systems running reliably. You initiate the end-of-shift system check, a comprehensive review of all transporter components to ensure they're ready for the next operator. This check is more thorough than the routine monitoring you've been doing all evening, taking about 20 minutes to complete but providing a detailed status report that the night shift can reference when they take over. Phase transition coils. Nominal, 99.8% efficiency maintained throughout the shift. The coils have processed 17 transports without any degradation in performance, exactly as designed. Pattern buffer. Nominal temperature, 94% optimization maintained. Zero accumulated stress from the evening's operations. The buffer is ready for another full shift of transport operations without needing maintenance. Biofilter, nominal, zero particle load, last diagnostic at 2200 hours past all tests. The filter is prepared to screen another day's worth of transports before requiring any attention. Targeting scanners, nominal, calibration, maintained within 0.01 centimeters throughout all transports. The scanners are providing perfect positional accuracy with no drift detected. Emitter array, nominal, all 48 emitters functioning correctly with no variation in output power. The array is ready to create annular confinement beams with the same precision it demonstrated all evening. The comprehensive check completes and you generate the end-of-shift report that summarizes the evening's work. Transporter Room 3, Delta Shift, Operator Ensign Riley. 17 transports completed, 9 personnel outbound, 4 personnel inbound, 4 cargo operations. All transports completed successfully with 0 anomalies. Biofilter diagnostic passed at 2200 hours. Pattern buffer operated 0.61, 0.81% above nominal temperature due to elevated usage, Return to baseline by shift end. All systems nominal and ready for next shift. No maintenance required. You save the report to the duty log, where it joins the continuous record of operations that extends back through every shift since this transporter was installed aboard the Perseverance. Somewhere in the computer's memory banks, there exists a complete history of every transport ever performed in this room. Every person moved, every cargo transferred, every system diagnostic run, every maintenance procedure completed. It's a comprehensive archive that could tell the story of the ship's operations if anyone ever had time to read through it all. The doors slide open and crewman Sato enters, your relief operator for the night shift, carrying the coffee mug that will be her companion for the next 8 hours. She's young, only 6 months out of the academy, but she's proven herself a capable operator who takes the work seriously. "Evening, Riley," Sato says, approaching the console. "How's the transporter been behaving?" "Perfectly all night," you report, gesturing to the displays. 17 transports without complications. Pattern buffer ran slightly warm, but stayed well within acceptable range. Just completed the end of shift diagnostic, everything shows green. 1 cargo container on pad 3 waiting for science department retrieval. It can sit there safely, already flagged in the system. Sato nods, reviewing the console displays and scanning through the shift report you generated. "Looks good. Any quirks I should watch for?" "Nothing unusual. Standard operations, routine monitoring. The biofilter diagnostic at 1000 hours will fall on your shift. It's already scheduled in the system." "Got it." Sato slides into the operator's chair as you stand, and you perform the ritual transfer of responsibility. Computer transfer transporter room operations to crewman Sato. Authorization Riley 73 Alpha. The computer chirps. "Transfer acknowledged. Crewman Sato is now primary transporter operator for room 3. "I stand relieved," you say formally. "The transporter is yours, Sato. Have a quiet shift." "Thanks, Riley. Get some rest." You gather your personal pad and the coffee mug that's been empty for hours, taking one last look around the transporter room. The equipment hums steadily. The displays show green indicators. The platform stands empty and ready for whatever transports the night might bring. It's satisfying to leave a system in perfect condition, to know that the next operator is inheriting a transporter that's been properly maintained and thoroughly documented. The doors slide closed behind you, and you step into the Perseverance's corridors, where the lighting has shifted to night mode. Slightly dimmer, slightly more relaxed than the bright illumination of day cycle. The ship continues its standard orbit, all systems functioning normally, all operations proceeding according to schedule. Your shift is complete, your duty fulfilled, your contribution to the ship's mission delivered with quiet competence and careful attention to detail. Now comes the rest period, the recovery time that will prepare you for tomorrow's shift, when you'll return to Transporter Room 3 and begin the cycle again. The corridors are peaceful at this hour. Most of the crew is either on duty at their assigned stations or in their quarters for the night. The lighting is set to night cycle, creating a softer atmosphere that's easier on eyes adjusted to the transporter room's operational illumination. You walk with the slightly stiff gait of someone who's been sitting for 8 hours, feeling your muscles gradually loosen with movement. The route from Transporter Room 3 to your quarters on Deck 8 is familiar enough that you could walk it in complete darkness. Turn left out of the transporter room, follow the corridor to the main junction, take the turbo lift down 2 decks, another corridor to the crew quarters section, and finally to your door marked with your name and rank. You pass a few crew members in the corridors, security personnel making their rounds, engineers heading to or from their duty stations, a medical technician carrying a medical kit towards sickbay. Each one nods or offers a brief greeting, the kind of casual acknowledgement that crew members exchange during quiet hours when more elaborate conversation seems inappropriate to the subdued atmosphere. The turbo lift arrives immediately when you call it, and you step inside the familiar cylindrical space. Deck 8, crew quarters, you state clearly, and the lift responds with its characteristic hum, beginning the short descent. The turbolift system is another piece of technology that you've stopped really noticing. It just works, moving you through the Perseverance's vertical spaces with the same reliability that the transporter moves people through three-dimensional space. The doors open on Deck 8 and you exit into another familiar corridor. The crew quarters section is particularly quiet this time of night. Most off-duty personnel are in their rooms, sleeping or engaging in quiet evening activities. A few doors show light spilling into the corridor from partially open rooms where occupants are still awake, but most are sealed and dark, their residents resting before tomorrow's shifts begin. Your quarters are near the end of the corridor, a single occupant room appropriate to your rank as an ensign. The door slides open at your approach, responding to your biosignature and identity, welcoming you into the private space that's been yours for the past 2 years, aboard the Perseverance. The quarters are modest but sufficient: a sleeping area with a standard bunk, a small desk with computer access, a storage locker for personal items and uniforms, a small bathroom with sonic shower. The Federation doesn't believe in luxury for junior officers, but they provide everything necessary for rest and recovery between duty shifts. You set your pad on the desk and place the empty coffee mug in the small recycler that will clean it for tomorrow's use. Your uniform vest comes off next, hung carefully on its designated hook. Even off duty, you maintain the habits of neatness and organisation that Starfleet drills into every officer from their first day at the Academy. The computer terminal on your desk shows a few messages that arrived during your shift. Nothing urgent, just routine communications from friends serving on other ships, a newsletter from Starfleet Technical Services about updates to transporter operating procedures, a message from your parents back on Earth asking how you're doing and mentioning that your sister recently got promoted at her civilian job. You make a mental note to respond to the messages tomorrow after you've rested. Right now, after 8 hours of monitoring transporter systems and moving personnel across space, what you need is the wind-down routine that prepares your mind and body for sleep. The sonic shower is quick and refreshing. 30 seconds of high-frequency sound waves that remove dirt and dead skin without using water. Federation ships conserve water religiously, using sonic showers to reduce the need for constant water recycling. It's not quite as satisfying as a traditional water shower, but it serves the purpose efficiently. You change into sleeping clothes, comfortable loose-fitting garments that Starfleet provides, designed for rest rather than duty. The ship's environmental controls maintain comfortable temperature throughout the quarters, so you don't need heavy blankets or heating. Before bed, you pull up the ship's status display on your computer terminal, checking the current operational state out of habit more than necessity. All systems showing green. The Perseverance remains in standard orbit around Research Station Kepler 7. No alerts, no emergencies, no unusual situations requiring immediate attention. Tomorrow will bring another standard duty rotation, another shift of transporter operations, another day of routine service. You dim the lights to their minimum setting, just enough to navigate without stumbling if you wake during the night, and settle into your bunk. The mattress is standard Starfleet issue, neither particularly comfortable nor uncomfortable, shaped by your body over 2 years of use into a familiar contour that supports sleep. Through the bulkhead, you can hear the faint hum of the Perseverance's systems. Warp engines idling in standard orbit. Mode environmental controls maintaining atmosphere and temperature. The subtle vibrations that indicate a living vessel carrying out its mission. These sounds are so familiar now that they've become white noise, comforting rather than distracting, confirming that all is well with the ship and its systems. Your mind begins its natural wind down, thoughts drifting from the specific details of the shift toward vaguer considerations. 17 transports, all successful, no problems. Pattern buffer behaved well. biofilter past diagnostics, systems maintained, duty fulfilled. The bunk is comfortable, the quarters are quiet, and sleep is approaching with gentle inevitability. Tomorrow will come, and with it another shift, another set of transports, another opportunity to serve. But that's tomorrow's concern. Tonight is for rest, for recovery, for letting go of the day's responsibilities and trusting that the night shift will maintain watch while you sleep. Your eyes close, and the ship's gentle hum carries you toward the peace of well-earned rest. The quarters are cool and dark, exactly right for sleep. The Perseverance's environmental systems maintain perfect conditions automatically, adjusting temperature and air circulation to promote rest without conscious awareness. You sink deeper into the mattress, feeling the day's accumulated stiffness begin to release from muscles that held the same positions for hours at the transporter console. In your mind, the evening's transports replay in fragmentary images, the sparkle of materialization, the green indicators on the displays, the smooth progress of patterns moving through the buffer. Each transport was routine, each one successful, each one a small act of service that contributed to the ship's larger mission. The ordinary made extraordinary through technology, then made ordinary again through repetition and routine. You may rest now, transporter operator. The Perseverance continues its orbit, and other operators maintain watch over other systems. Crewman Sato stands ready at Transporter Room 3, monitoring the same displays you watched all evening, prepared to transport whoever needs movement through space. The continuous operation flows on, passed from shift to shift, from operator to operator, maintaining the Federation's presence among the stars. Sleep approaches with gentle insistence, carrying you away from conscious thought into deeper rest. The details fade, targeting coordinates, pattern buffer temperatures, biofilter readings, all becoming irrelevant as your mind releases its grip on the specific and drifts toward the general peace of unconsciousness. May your dreams be as smooth as phase transition coils, as precise as targeting scanners, as reliable as the annular confinement beam. May you rest deeply and wake refreshed, ready for tomorrow's shift when the transporter will once again require your attention and expertise. The Federation needs operators who can be trusted with quantum patterns, who understand that every transport is someone's life, briefly held as information, who maintain the systems that make the impossible routine. You are one of those operators, and you've served your shift with the quiet competence that keeps exploration functioning. Sleep now, knowing that you've done your work well. The pattern buffer has cooled to nominal temperature. The biofilter stands ready to screen tomorrow's transports. The targeting scanners maintain their perfect calibration. All systems are prepared for the next shift, the next operator, the next cycle of service. In a starship that explores the galaxy, someone must operate the transporters. Someone must check the calibrations and maintain the logs, and ensure that people materialize correctly after their journey through the matter stream. Sometimes, during standard shifts in stable orbits around peaceful stations, that someone is you. But not now. Now is for rest, for letting go of responsibility, for trusting that others will maintain watch while you recover from the day's work. The transporter room is in capable hands. The Perseverance continues its mission, and you can sleep with the satisfaction of duty performed, service rendered, excellence maintained. Let the hum of the ship's systems become a lullaby, carrying you deeper into rest. Let the familiar sounds of the vessel create comfort rather than disturbance. Let your mind release its grip on the details of operation and drift toward the peace of sleep. The transporter will be there tomorrow, waiting patiently for your return. The pattern buffer will need monitoring, the personnel and cargo will need moving, but those are tomorrow's concerns. Tonight is for rest, for recovery, for the deep sleep that comes after honest work honestly completed. Good night, Ensign Riley. Good night, transporter operator. Good night, faithful servant of Federation operations. May your sleep be as peaceful as a ship in stable orbit, as comfortable as a properly calibrated system, as restorative as a fully optimized pattern buffer. Sleep well and dream of service rendered, of systems maintained, of patterns safely transported from here to there. Dream of the satisfaction that comes from work done properly, from responsibilities carefully executed, from trust deservedly earned. The shift is over. The duty is complete. Rest now and let the perseverance watch over your dreams. Good night.